We will call our Michigan Area Council of Governments Policy Board meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Good morning. I'll read the roll. Please let us know if you're here. Commissioner Carl Baxmeyer.
Here.
Commissioner Jessica Bohannon. District Deputy Commissioner Matt Dyksley. Here. Councilman Dwight Fish.
Virtual.
Councilor Mark Virtual. Councilman Doug Graham. Here. Commissioner Carrie Groninger. Here. Councilwoman Kathy Groninger.
Here.
Mayor Jeff Gross. Councilman Tim Harmon. Mayor Phil Jenkins. Mayor Phil Jenkins sends his regards. He has an AIM Medical Trust meeting that he had to attend. District Deputy Commissioner Jason Kaiser.
Here.
Councilman Kenneth Lee. Mayor Gina Lichty. Mayor Robert Listenberger.
Here.
Councilor Mark Little. Mayor James Mueller. Mayor Rob Robertson.
Here.
Councilman Brian Tanner, he sends his regards. He was at a council meeting until 4 a.m. last night. Councilman Tony Violi. Here. Commissioner Susie Wyrick. Mayor David Wood.
Yes, sir.
We have a quorum of members present. We'll be voting only in person today.
And we'll see. Minutes of the November 12th meeting have been circulated. Do I have any questions, comments, or do I hear a motion? We approve the minutes. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Reports. Your chairman has no report, other than to apologize for missing a couple of meetings here this year. My duties with AIM have carried me all over the state of Indiana in defense of local government, cities and towns, and our actual future. So that has unfortunately sometimes caused some conflicts of schedule. So hate that I couldn't be here a little more often than I was. But we have the selection of the nominating committee for calendar year 2026 policy to hold officers.
Yes, so every year we have a nominating committee to select our officers. Our typical past precedent is that officers all move up one seat if they're willing and continuing to serve. And then we fill in that final seat or any other vacancies. So we just need a nominating committee. I am pre-volunteering Mayor Jenkins since he couldn't be here. So he will be sitting in service on that committee. We just need two or three other folks. This is a fairly simple process. I've already started the process of asking each of the existing officers if they'll continue to serve. And then we'll have usually a virtual meeting to between now and the January meeting to just go over potential appointments for any other vacancies. So it's usually a fairly, it's not exactly a cumbersome process. And we try to make it simple for you. So just 2 to 3 volunteers would be lovely.
Any volunteers stepping forward? I will.
Yes, please.
Enough for you?
I think so.
You guys are two.
I heard Councilman Graham, right? And Commissioner Wyrick. And then I've already pre-volunteered Mayor Jenkins.
Okay, moving on to financial reports.
Hi, good morning, everyone. So you have the October 2025 financial report. So far through our fiscal year to date through October, we are at approximately $2.8 million spent, which is around 22% of our total annual budget for the fiscal year. Our cash balance at the end of October was $993,721.03. And our disbursements for the month of October was $741,416.63. Are there any questions over the October report? Hearing none, I'd like to ask for board approval of the October 2025 financial report.
Second, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Terry.
And yes, I would just direct you to your packet for the modifications that are in your packet, and you can all see those. And if you have any questions, I'm sure James or someone from the staff can answer them. And then There's a calendar with a meeting schedule. And your packet as well.
No proposed changes to that. It'd be the second Wednesday of the month. We'll continue to meet at Mishawaka City Hall. And so no proposed changes to that. The only thing that might be considered a proposed change, in the past, in February, we have typically canceled that meeting because we are normally myself, as well as 3 of the officers or so, are attending a national conference. There have been schedule conflicts there with the policy board meeting and that conference over the last 3 to 5 years. This year, there's no conflict though. So we are proposing still to have that February 11th meeting. Oh, also, we do want to point out that November 11th, we may need to figure out a different day because it does fall on Veterans Day. So right now we are leaving it on that day, but we may end up either canceling it or shifting the schedule. I know that shifting the schedule is typically hard on trying to then get a quorum. So depending on as we come up to that, how much business we may or may not have, that is a proposed. It is right now on the 11th, but that may have to end up getting canceled or rescheduled. So thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Secretary. Moving on to old business,
No old business today.
new business.
Yeah, we have a few items of new business, and Kelsey will be presenting Transportation Resolution 3325.
All right, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
So I'll be presenting Transportation Resolution 33-25. Item A is NDOT initiated and located in Elkhart County. It is an intersection improvement project with added turn lanes. The location is State Road 19 and County Road 28, 1.55 miles south of US 20. The action is adding the preliminary engineering phase. Are there any questions?
I will mention that as a part of that, we'll probably also be adding a traffic signal as well as to the turn lanes.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, do we have a motion? So moved.
Second.
We have a motion to approve resolution 3325 in a second. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Good. We also have transit resolution 34-25, which is initiated by MACOG. This is to program $1 million of CMAQ funding, 800,000 federal, 200 local match for operating assistance for the interurban trolley. So this is primarily for our new Route 30 yellow line connector to South Bend. Any questions? Ask for approval of resolution 34-25.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other comments, questions? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thanks.
All right, thanks.
Great. Our next item is Resolution 3525. This item is related to the 2026 safety performance measure targets for the state of Indiana. Just to back up and walk you through this, as of say MAP 21 or the FAST Act, the transportation kind of legislations nationally, there are items that are called performance measures. These are various metrics to measure overall how the system is doing. And one of those metrics is safety. And there are 5 elements that you can see up here where there are performance measures around the number of fatalities that happen on our roadways in the state, the rate of fatalities per 100 million miles traveled in the state, the number of serious injuries in the state, the rate of serious injuries per 100 million miles traveled in the state, and the number of non-motorist fatalities and serious injuries in the state of Indiana. Since about, 2016 or so, we have been looking at those numbers And as the Metropolitan Planning Organization, we have one of two choices, to either support the state target or to implement our own performance measure. There's really no upside for us to set up our own performance measures outside of just additional bureaucracy and getting to fill out a report and all of those kind of things. Instead, what we have historically always chosen to do is to collaborate with the state of Indiana, work with them on how they derive these numbers and get that information from folks like Taylor Brubel in the state safety office, working collaboratively with them then to make sure that we're doing projects that are supporting these state targets. So it has been our long held tradition and precedent to support the state targets. These state targets are presented for 2026. Number of fatalities, 794.7. Rate of fatalities per 100 million, 0.992. Number of serious injuries, 2,965.5. Rate of serious injuries per 100 million miles traveled, 3.702. And number of non-motorist fatalities and serious injuries, 462.96. I believe on the next slide, I don't have a clicker, so you can see how this compares to past safety targets, and you can either read that, but I believe on the next slide, we've created some visuals to try and break this down. All of those targets that are created are based on a 5-year average. And so what you see is the light blue line is the actual annual number, the actual number that actually occurred that year. So right now we do not have a 2025 number because there's still the remaining portion of December. So we will eventually get those official numbers. The dark blue number is, or the dark blue line is the 5-year average. And then the target, the goal, is the orange line. So you can see how that compares year over year when you have set those targets and supported those state targets, how that has looked. So the one number that might jump out at you, if you remember these numbers very, very well, is the number of non-motorist fatalities, fatalities and serious injuries. So essentially the pedestrian, bicyclist, that kind of vulnerable road user. That number is significantly larger than last year as a target. But I would say that that target has also been very lofty based on the methodology to try and get there in 23, 24, 25. And 2026 is still aspirational compared to where our baseline has been. But especially with that spike in 24, getting kind of back more towards our 21 and 22 averages or actuals, it's still a lofty kind of target, but it is higher than in the past based on kind of those 5-year moving averages. So yes.
Can you, first of all, is there do you have a handout that has that?
I do not offhand.
All right, no problem. Is it in the, could I go online and get it?
Yeah, we'll definitely send it out. And
There, Federal Highway does have a platform where they have these targets, although this includes 2024 data, but we're happy to share out.
I was more interested in the panel before that.
yeah, if you go back one.
The trend.
Yeah, this one. Yep.
Maybe I can take a quick picture.
And we can send these out too. We'd be happy to.
I can see it right now. I'm not taking a picture of myself.
Are these numbers for our region or?
They are not. They are for the state, the entire state.
Are you gonna feedback to what our?
Yes, so we could set our own federal performance measures, but we don't. So what we do instead, and what you'll hear later, David will do a presentation on some of our safety data related to Q3 of 2025. We have our own dashboards online that measure and look at what does some of this information look like for our region. We have opted to have those dashboards and those kind of goals and looking at that separately outside of kind of the more bureaucratic federal process. And we don't want to confuse our federal friends by saying these are our performance measures, because these are the official federal performance measures that we've supported, but we do have kind of internal goals that we have where the public can see number of fatalities, number of vulnerable road user fatalities, serious injuries, those kind of things.
I would just be interested in the graph that showed how we perform
Yep.
on each of those things versus.
I think David will cover a little bit of that in our later presentation.
Just to see we're driving the number up and
100%.
down.
Yep.
So we've got a pre-identified slice of that pie that we take responsibility for, basically, right?
Yeah, more or less. The state the projects that we program, the projects that we advocate for, the projects that we're supporting are driven by this information. The state hasn't said like, oh, you in your region need to reduce fatalities by 20, right? Like, we haven't done that. It's more alignment and making sure we're all moving in the same direction and supporting similar kind of projects. Then they have given us a pre-apportioned, you should target this.
Fair enough.
Yep.
And James, these are like. We'll see where we stack up against the state,
Yeah, as a percentage.
Well,
Yeah.
the measurement should be the same for 100 million or whatever.
Yep. And we can definitely provide more information on that in a subsequent meeting.
James, why is it relevant for us to actually approve state in our individual?
Yeah,
Why is it relevant?
that's a great question. First, I think in some states, I would say that this isn't the case in Indiana, but in some states, there are strained relationships between, say, maybe the Metropolitan Planning Organization and the state, and the legislation around this specifically says that the MPOs like MACOG must be consulted, must then be involved, etc. For us, we don't necessarily have that challenge, but it definitely has created some great opportunities for us to interact more with folks like Taylor Rubel down in the central office, safety, and work on how we get to cleaner data and how we get to better data, and that has been positive. You'll hear David maybe touch on later, updated safety data platforms that the state will be providing to all the MPOs. And so I think it's created some good byproducts, but the specific reason of why is because the federal rules say that after the state has adopted their target, within 180 days, we must either support theirs or establish our own.
So if we reject it, we have to establish our own.
Correct. And we have always held from day one that we would much rather support the state's target, because we're all after the same thing in the end, than establish our own. Now, if the state does not meet their target, there is a certain amount of funds that are essentially, I'll use the word penalized. I don't know that that's the official federal rule, but where they have to ensure that X number of dollars are spent on certain safety kind of projects. If we set our own target and then did not meet that, we have to write a report. And so that's where we would rather work with the state to help the state achieve its goals. So we have the best safety outcomes as well as the most flexible funds. So that's where we've always held that.
Thanks.
Yep.
James, now these are your targets.
These are the targets.
They're not the
These are not
actual.
the actuals. So if we go to the next one, the actuals are showing up in that light blue.
Okay.
And then you can see the targets are in orange. That's kind of the state's goals, if you will.
I guess I'm just glad to see that they're actually, at least on starting to trend upward, because I think we all know with distracted drivers and everything that's out there, and to think that we're going to trend downward is, I mean, we can wish, but
Well,
I mean,
yeah.
it's just not happening. But it is pretty crazy that over 60% of the fatalities are in those pedestrian or bicyclists, those vulnerable users. Just definitely trying to figure out how we can make that safer for our people.
Yeah, I would say that in the original iteration of performance measures, there was actually no rule that said the performance measure had to go down.
Right.
And so there was a lot of states, Indiana included, that based on 5-year moving average, were setting targets that were increasing. The feds did not like that. And so in a subsequent, I think the IIJA, the Build Infrastructure Law, it's pretty much required that the target must be below the 5-year average. Some iteration like that. So they do have to be a downward trend.
Yeah, but when you look at these graphs, I mean, there's the directions.
Yeah, there's still a lot of work to do with, driver behavior around speed and distraction.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, we'll entertain a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Resolution 3625. Jeremiah.
Morning.
Morning.
I'm here to ask for your endorsement of to approve and certify updates to the MACOG Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan PTASP as required by the Federal Transit Administration. There are a few copies on the table. This is a document that we have to update annually, basically with safety information from the trolley to set basically performance goals for safety on the interurban trolley system. And really, they really haven't, the averages haven't changed much once I took the 5-year averages dropping off 2019 to 2024. So if there are not any, didn't know if there are any further questions. Otherwise, I'd like to ask for your approval of resolution 36-25.
Any questions? Comments?
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the table. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution carries.
Thank you.
Staff updates.
Yep. So in more exciting interurban trolley news, due to the closure of the old Elkhart County Courthouse on Franklin Street downtown, we are moving our main transfer center to the interurban trolley. So previously our 5 bus routes would all link up right there on Franklin Street in front of the courthouse, and that would be kind of where all the passengers would get off, switch buses at the top of the hour. And because of that closure, we're now relocating to over on 2nd Street, right in front of the depot track station. So we'll have a little bit of kind of multimodal connections there with the morning trains that come in, as well as just being a little bit more of a safe location, out of the way, not as high traffic of a street. So it'll be an improvement for passengers, kind of an improvement for connections. And then we're also working with the city, a lot of thanks to the city of Elkhart for this, on getting some nice infrastructure, some nice canopy shelters in there to be a really safe, kind of nice space to wait for our passengers.
Yeah, real quick, Dwight Fish had a question online. He asked about will the bus have to be moved? And so I think you just mentioned that.
Yeah, so temporarily, we have a couple of the shelters are over kind of right here across the street. There's some kind of issues with the sidewalk and how it's constructed that prevent our current shelters from being installed there. Basically, they're too wide. They would take up the entire sidewalk. And that's an ADA issue. So we currently have a couple across the street, so passengers can wait there. When the buses come, they can cross. But we are working on getting those basically, canopy style, like you might see at a train station or something like that. Over that
We've been working with Public Works over in the city, and they've been super responsive and working with us. And in the coming months, there will be some newer canopies that are then on that eastern side where the official transfer center is. So great partnership with the city to make this happen, and with the city's wonderful investments in the downtown street network, where a lot of the one-way streets have become two-way. This really allows for this to be unlocked and to happen, because operationally it would have just been too hard with the various kind of incongruent one-way streets to really make this work. But this will be a nice new location. I think one of the biggest benefits for us is that, as Aiden pointed out, Franklin Street, pretty high traffic location. We did on-street boarding more or less there. While we had a marked lane that said bus only, it was still a pretty crowded area and highly trafficked. And this will really put us in an area where we're not in as much conflict with other motor vehicles. So it will be very nice and minimally disruptive to overall operations. I know it looks kind of interesting with all the different lines that are circled there. We were doing those kind of movements previously on Franklin. So honestly, I think operationally, this will be a nice plus for us. We have already started this. It went into effect Monday.
Yep.
So, so far it's been good. Lots of press releases, Facebook posts, posts in the app to make sure riders are aware, posts on the old shelter saying that it was closed, posts on, in public, on all of our vehicles, various news coverage, as well as then our contracted vendor had their street supervisor out there making sure that if anybody was waiting at the old courthouse, that we could either connect them quickly with a bus or make sure that they knew that they could just walk 2.5 blocks down. So for the most part, I think riders have been able to adopt to this change fairly well.
Yep, seems to have been a fairly seamless transition. I think
First of all, thank you for the work that you've already provided to public places. I know you guys have been working with this over the last actually year pretty consistently, and it's going really well.
Very well.
The question: do you have the number of riders that utilize that transfer station?
Yeah, we definitely do. I don't have it off the top of my head.
At a later date.
Yeah.
The other piece is the timing of moving it. And I know that you already as you just mentioned a moment ago, because I bumps up against the demolition of the structure that we currently have.
Right.
And so at this point, it moved
on Monday.
It moved on Monday.
So we're already moved. We wanted to be able to act quickly to make sure that we were not a hindrance to demolition activities of the courthouse in the next year. Also give riders the time to adopt and adapt to it. And so the only thing really is in the next few months would be the just continual improvement with the canopies and those kind of things.
Okay, and I know that we've communicated with the Art League as well as the Council on Aging on.
Yes, we also have, we have a good relationship with Council on Aging. That's another really important thing that we've been able to do is they've allowed us to use their restrooms for our drivers. So previously at the courthouse location, the drivers didn't really have a place to take breaks and use the restroom. So Council on Aging is very generously letting us use their facilities for that, which is great for everybody.
Thank you.
That's a great improvement. Much better location, out of the flow of traffic, logic. Great.
Yep. All right, thanks.
Nice job.
Good morning, everyone. So as James alluded to a moment ago, we did finish up Q3 crash statistics for fatal and serious injuries. I'm still working through the vulnerable road user dashboard, and the reason is because we all love community crossings and asset management plans and all the fine things that we submit through LTAP. That took a lot more time than expected this year. So the VRU data should be up, I would say, by the end of the week. So we're going to focus just on the fatal and serious injury data. This is July through September of 2025, 142 applicable collisions. You may be wondering, what does it mean by an applicable collision? Well, in this cleaning process, we go through and eliminate all the crashes that may involve someone standing next to their vehicle, changing a tire, and someone sideswipes them. While that may constitute a usual crash in the reports, in some cases, if it happens in a driveway, private property, it doesn't really have to do anything with our road. So we'll go through and kind of weed some of those out. But nonetheless, of the 142 applicable collisions during that time period, 21 fatalities in the MACOG region. Now that is actually slightly down from Q3 last year by 5. The number 22 that you see in parentheses, that's actually 22 fatalities that happened in the 21 fatal collisions. So one of those collisions did have multiple fatalities. So that's why that number is up there. Most of the crashes in our region are labeled as another motor vehicle. So it includes more than one vehicle, not necessarily a semi-truck or a school bus or a motorcycle. These are specifically automobile. But speaking of motorcycle collisions, they do make up 27% of all the collisions in quarter 3 that we have here in the MACOG region. So that number is actually 38 collisions. And I checked the numbers just a bit ago, and I'm going to refer to them just by looking at my phone here, because I just updated some of that this morning, that of the motorcycle fatalities, there were 9 in our region in quarter 3. Now compare that to 21 fatal injuries across the entire MACOG region in that time frame. So that's 43% of all the fatalities that happened in the MACOG region are with motorcycles. So that's just an interesting statistic that I wanted to bring up. And speaking of overall, if we were to compare this quarter to last third quarter of 2024 or fiscal year 25, we're actually up 14 crashes, 14 collisions that involve a fatal or serious injury crash.
Not just motorcycle at that point.
Exactly. That's across the board. Now, I did dive a little bit more into details because I got the traffic snapshot report from central office this morning. And through this, through the month of October, I believe it's just under 700 fatalities in the state. For us in the MACOG region, it's 55 fatalities. Now that includes all road users, VRU, that involves another vehicle collisions, motorcycles, school buses, the whole shebang. So we make up about 8% so far this year of the fatalities in the state, in our 4-county region. So I found that to be an interesting statistic as well. And yeah, 8% of that. So one new thing that I'm going through and going back to 2019 and going forward is I'm adding a new type of collision, and that's the single vehicle collision. So we know that there are all different types of road users, and sometimes we know that someone drives off the road, lane departure, and you know, whether it be a fatality, serious injury, whatnot, it only involves one vehicle. So we want to kind of break that information down. So I'm going through the numbers, and I'm going to, in the next month or so, have single vehicle as more of a populated color here on our crash dashboard. So you'll be able to distinguish between 2 motor vehicles, 1 motor vehicle, if it involves semi-trucks, motorcycles, VRU, and the whole shebang. So I know that's a lot of information in the short period of time, so I can try to answer any questions that you may all have.
The 142 includes the single vehicle collision.
Yes, yeah, that includes all the single vehicle collisions. And you know, honestly, the single vehicle collision, I think there's only like 6 of them that are on this map that I found just from this last quarter. So this will start lighting up in more of that darker blue color as I go through the data and that updates. Sure.
James, also, I don't know if you, I know Brian Tanner sent that, his little paragraph here.
Yeah.
Pretty much he said our population in the MACOG region
About
is
8%.
8.9% of the population. So realistically, we're 8% of the crashes. I mean, we're tracking relatively close to the state average. So it's not like we're abnormally high.
Correct. I think that's fair.
Yes, and I will say just the past 2 years compared to 22 and 23, we're actually slightly elevated for quarter 3 on the amount of collisions, whether it be fatal or incapacitating. So to say we're trending upward, it's kind of deceiving just because it's this specific quarter. But I'll say overall, compared to year over year, we're actually slightly down, which is a nice decrease. And not just here, but across the state as well.
I think and one thing, I know it's hard to see here, you can access all this information online. Also, if you haven't played with this dashboard, you can filter it by your county or your municipality. So you can see all those stats for these life-altering crashes for your municipality or county or jurisdiction that you're interested in. But here, right, the third kind of item, it says total crashes, then non-motorized crashes, and then the other one is year-by-year crashes. You will see that in 2021 to 2022, there was this drastic reduction in these life-altering crashes. I would love to say that's because there were so many safety performance or safety kind of projects implemented. The realistic reason to why there was that large of a decrease is the state changed the definition of what a life altering, like a serious injury crash was. It had a more stringent rubric post 2021. So you see that roughly our crashes for life altering crashes were cut in half. And that's because of how these are coded. 2025, I think, is going to be on par where we're at right now. We're trending to be on par with 2024. I think it'll depend on, we've had some, like in Marshall County, a very large, fatality collision at US 31 and 10 in the last week. And so I think it'll depend on how the year wraps up to see if we're at 2024 or if we trend more closely to 2023. So I think it'll really just depend on where we're at with this last month or so. I haven't really looked at the October, November to get a good sense of where we're at in that comparison.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely close to last year compared to 2023. But yeah, you'd mentioned it well, James. We're going to see how these numbers play out because obviously the lower the number, the better off we are.
So motorcycles seem like a disproportionate amount of these crashes and particular fatalities. Are we seeing any trends there?
We're actually down compared to last year. Yeah, last year we were just about 50% of all the crashes in the quarter three were fatal. So
quarter three tends, if you think about what quarter three is, right? Yeah. So that tends to be, the July through September. Quarter two, quarter three tend to be the most elevated for motorcyclists because of the time of year, right? It's usually a disproportionate amount of serious injuries and fatalities compared to quarter one and quarter four. But it's that time of year where more motorcyclists are out. And so there is a higher risk factor with more folks out and about on motorcycles in those quarters.
Yeah. And
I was gonna say, I'm gonna add a personal story. I don't know if y'all know, my dad was a police officer in Chicago. He used to be a traffic accident investigator. When I was 15, almost 16, the 5-inch ring binders, he made me sit through and look at 3 books of those from specifically motorcycle accidents. The majority of the accidents I feel like have always been from motorcycles, fatal wise, and I don't know that trend's going to change just by nature of how exposed the riders are. But it was a I've not been on a motorcycle.
It's job.
It did its job. My sisters never got that same lesson, but they survived.
James, is there anything that they do as far as like miles traveled? Because I mean, that's probably would almost be a more realistic than even the population, because you could have a whole bunch of traffic passing through your community, but it doesn't really.
There are ways to do, rates for 100 million miles traveled. I don't know that we have those numbers.
It's like specific to ours.
Off the top, but they could be calculated.
It would take some just deriving from not only AEBT, but just the amount of center line miles in the road in the municipality.
Only because of having been article in the newspaper pointing out that person who
yes,
and the specific change to safety of that. Is there any way or will we be able to break that out of the bicycles, the e-bikes?
Yes and no. I say yes in the fact that the database, the ARIES database, which is for the state, that it actually has a selection now for electric bicycle. However, as I tried to pull the VRU data for quarter three, it shows 0. So that's the yes that it's in there. However, no is we'd have to go through every single report that involves a bicycle, look in the narrative and say, okay, this specifically says electric bicycle. So there is the ability to do it. It is a lot. It's just going back into some of that data. I will say that I haven't come across a lot. And
I'm going to add.
Yes. Correct.
They talk in this article about the travel question.
They do. Right.
But in those reports, you're going to have to distinguish, is it power as far as speed, or is it just shifting and braking that's electric? So it's gonna be a mess for a while.
Well, and that's the challenge with any of this data is while our police partners do an excellent job There is the opportunity for just either information not being included, information here. You know, a lot of times officers believe that the crash reports are more for an insurance purpose and don't know necessarily that there are folks doing back-end analytics to try and understand trends around certain topics. That's why we have to do a lot of work around, like, you know, there is a button to say that this crash occurred in a parking lot, right? But that's not always marked. And so, you know, we're focused predominantly on public roadways, not on private property and those kind of things. And so we have to do a lot of work to make sure that when someone says the crash occurred at Cleveland in 23, well, there are 2 Clevelands in 23s, right? Like, which location was it at, right? And so we do a lot of that work. And this e-bike kind of item is something that we want to pay attention to, but it often depends on whether or not it's included in the report to know whether that bike crash or scooter crash was a e-bike or just a traditional kind of human powered bike. Yeah.
Well, real quick, do you have access to any more similar statewide data? Because it's very rare for me to get a call about an accident. I got 5 calls this weekend about that accident. My constituents are starting to feel like that is the worst intersection in the state.
It is. Well, I don't know about,
well, at least in the MACOG region,
can't
it
speak
is.
to the state, but when we have ever analyzed it, we have looked at it in the region and we have looked at it historically, not recently, but in the past. I don't think things will have changed greatly. We have looked at it for the entire US 31 corridor from South Bend to northern kind of Hamilton County area. And it is consistently been in the top for our region related to safety, and then for US 31 related to specifically serious injury and fatal collisions that have occurred there. Across the last 5 years, there have been, on average, there was I think 22 and 24 where there weren't fatal crashes there, but every other year, 2020 through 2025, there have been at least 1 fatal collision. Some years 2, and multiple fatalities depending on the year. It is definitely a location that has continually had its safety challenges.
So it's a little, yeah. So there's an interchange coming, letting in 27, construction 28, 29. Yeah, I'm getting feedback. I know the folks down there hate the idea of J-turns and stuff like that. We're glad we're going to get a better solution long term, but they're telling me you want to see something happen like yesterday.
So for what it's worth, we had a conversation before the crash this weekend. We sat down with the town of Argus and talked to them. They had reached out to us asking about what else we could do. I had an email yesterday from the Marshall County Council President. Started talking to him about that. We're kind of going back and looking at anything we can do. For what it's worth, we have kind of thrown whatever we can do, other than the J-turn, which we tried to do at this location to try to limit these. They came up with some, in theory, really good ideas, but in practice could potentially make things worse. We kind of shared with them, we're going to try whatever we can do. Actually, I'm meeting this afternoon with our traffic engineer to say, is there something that we can do here? Anything that we can do until that interchange comes in. So we have really worked with the locals. If you have any questions or any of your folks talking, I'm always available to have a conversation. But yeah, we're looking at anything we possibly can do because, obviously the company is.
I remember the big J-turn debate as a temporary solution until an interchange, because I'm not really one of those either.
So I will apologize in advance. I bring that up a lot, and I do because I was one of the ones who stood on the firing line and got screamed at about how big we don't want this, we want to wait for the interchange. I wish we had forced it down their throats, to be honest, because we'd have a lot more people alive today. It's very frustrating to me because we tried. And look, I'm not playing holier than thou, but I would encourage from a broader scale, when things like this come up in your local communities, but then let's talk and compromise if we can. And it may be, hey, interchange is coming here, but until then, we got to do something about it. So we all want the same thing. And every time I hear about a crash there, I lost sleepless nights about this past weekend and all the other ones because it's something we could have done something about. And it really affects me personally as well as I know your community.
And I'll say whatever you guys can do to mitigate that at the time, I can tell you from a county perspective, you will be supportive of that.
Appreciate that.
If there's any if you guys did decide you want to throw in some J turns in the spring, we would not push back on that.
Sure. I appreciate that. And like I said, the conversation is always ongoing. So as you or any locals have any, I'm always available day or next time to chat and talk to the challenges or the solutions. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, and one other thing to touch on that I didn't get a chance to, I think James even alluded to some of the tools that we're going to get a hold of as an MPO. NDOT, during their network screens, they usually use the Center for Road Safety through Purdue University. That sort of partnership is ending slightly, so they're going to go more to an AASHTO, where it's basically a program in order to take a lot of the data, make sure everything's in the proper order. We all know that everything's going toward AI, so we got to keep up with that. And as an MPO, we will have access to that at some point. I already requested access, and I got denied by the state because it's not rolled out yet. So, I'm trying to get on the forefront of this, but all of us, we all want the same goal as we just talked about. So, we're going to get there. But we'll have more data since we'll have the access to AASHTO, where maybe to get those property damage only crashes possible or non-incapacitating injury crashes into our system as well.
Yeah, it'll be a great improvement. So if you're not familiar, we have access to ARIES, which is the state police reporting database, whether it's the city of Mishawaka or the town of Roseland or ISP. Every police entity reports into that, their crash data. So we have access to every single crash, and we do a lot of work to make sure that we're comfortable with the fatal, incapacitating, the vulnerable road user data to publish that. But there are 40,000 property damage only crashes that occur in our region every single year. It's too many records for us to go through and try and make sure that we're comfortable publishing that information. And so working with the state, AASHTO will help us be able to look at that data quicker and cleaner. And the bigger thing too is in a collaborative platform. Right now we do all our own crash data cleaning. And then we show up to a meeting with NDOT and go, well, we have, right? And they've ruled out certain crashes under certain ways. We ruled out crashes under certain ways or included them. And this will allow us to collaborate on the same platform. So we're all looking at the same number of crashes at locations. Not that there are different numbers, but there are different rationales to why you included a crash or excluded a crash. Perhaps you excluded it for various reasons that we include it. And so this will allow us to better collaborate on that. And we appreciate Taylor Rubel at the NDOT Safety pushing that forward.
So James, what creates I guess, what establishes outside of the frequency, is it the severity of the crash as well that would make an intersection rise to a level we need to address it? And I'm specifically thinking about County Road 40 and 17 in Elkhart. There was a death there, a couple of them just happened. And after seeing that, there were probably a couple that occurred a couple of months prior to that. And so I don't know how those intersections rise to a level of we need to address this. And I think there's been some correction made there, if I'm not mistaken. One of the kids who died, I knew very well the last who passed.
So when it comes to how we collaborate with the state, typically what you do is you're looking at like a 3 or 5 year set of time, the most recent 3 to 5 year set of time on what crashes look like. And then there's usually a matrix of property damage only are considered less severe. You're still looking at those, but you factor those in. Serious injury, non-incapacitating injury, then serious injury, and then fatality, and you create kind of a metric based on the number of crashes and then the annual daily traffic. But then we have a network screening that we do with the state that we're invited to in each district, where we work with the district offices to talk through safety on their roadways every year and what they're looking at and what they're prioritizing. So that's kind of the way that we collaborate with the state now. So.
Yeah, and on that note, I have the ability, the software that was used previously and is for the most part still used is the Road Hat software. I have access to that. So if there are certain intersections we want to look at, we can punch the numbers in ourselves, come up with these type of values, see, does it reach a threshold that yes, something needs to be done, or even maybe a moderate. We can bring, whether it be commissioners together, engineers together, have an RSA, have a road safety audit at these locations and figure out what can we do to really just prevent any serious or fatal injuries or crashes in general. If there's no other questions, you can always reach out to me. And again, this data is available on our MACOG website. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, David. Moving on, Caitlin.
Yes. Yeah, so I have a update related to the rail corridor overpass and improvement study, which is the rail line that goes through Osceola and at the county line. Over this past month, we've had a request for proposals related to that. That concluded last week, and we received a total of 4 proposals, one from Abbenmarsh with USI Consultants, one from American Structure Point, with support from SWCA, the Corradino Group with support from Cambridge Systematics, and DLC with support from Lockmuir Group. And so we have a MACOG representative, St. Joseph County representative, and Elkhart County representative currently scoring those proposals. And we should have announcement of finalists this week with hopefully some interviews next week. So by January, should have kind of a consultant on board for this study that will largely take place over the 2026 year. So it's something I wanted to something I want to put on the agenda. I know many of you received announcements related to community crossings last week, but they made the public announcement just yesterday. And so I made this kind of depressing chart related to kind of previous years of funding and the number of communities that were awarded. This most recent round, we had, I think, $2.1 million awarded in the region for across 7 communities. So it's quite different than the past couple of years, but just wanted to kind of highlight how changes to this program kind of going to have kind of a significant impact on what some of our communities were used to receiving.
So the one thing that I'm not sure on, I know this was in the legislation, they're capped at $100 million, and I know that it's going to be capped again for next year. And I'm sorry.
I think all.
Yes, yes. However,
yeah.
I know the goal was to build a reserve for the transition to a lane mile. Yes. Lane mile.
Yes.
Lane mile payment, and I'm wondering how that will compare to dollars we would have gotten normally versus this. If there's any projections that you've seen on that.
I have not seen any projections. I would say that there are. I've talked to many folks at the state of Indiana or DOT related to this once announcements and really when no letters started coming out.
I don't know.
NDOT did what was required of them under the legislation. The CCMG program in previous years was awarding $350 million and they went to $100 million. Right, they definitely got kneecapped, if you will, on that program. The
intent, though, the intent is clearly to take away the grant application process and just fund directly, which in the long term,
but the distribution,
if the issue wasn't so painful between now and then,
the distribution doesn't take effect until the end of like 2027.
Right.
So there's definitely a long transition period because of the other, what I would call special interest pay fors, for whether it be Indianapolis or otherwise. And so there is definitely a long transition period. I think there is the potential to look at and talk with your legislative folks, your legislators, about what this means for you from a municipal perspective and whether or not there are tweaks that should be made, whether that's the reserve or the cap of community crossings is increased or that the distribution from lane miles happens earlier. They they did that for multiple reasons where it's delayed. First, because of the incentives around enacting a local wheel tax or those kind of things. You always have to do that years before. And so there's a transition period that has to happen there. But yeah, I think, the program went from 330 million to 100 million, and there were $240 million worth of applications received. And there were a lot of factors into how they came to cut that down to 100 million. I was extremely disappointed based on the results, because you'll see here, we've typically done $10 to $15 million per year in community crossing funds, and this year we were scraping closer to 5 million. And there isn't even a second call to try and change that around. So I think there is a drastic thing that has been done to community crossings in the program. I have not seen projections to know if the lane mile distribution makes better. I haven't seen those.
I don't know if that information is out or even calculated.
Yes,
Right.
right.
How that's going to play out.
Because it all depends on how many folks end up, as it's written now, how many folks have adopted local wheel taxes.
And I've also had a lot of, and this is not all of my soapbox was legislative session, as I think all of ours was last year. What I'm hearing now from some of the legislators is they're pointing their finger at NDOT and saying, well, they're not instituting the law correctly. So I made sure that I understood the law with Kathy, and she clarified, no, they're following like the way it is. So don't let your legislators tell you
Well,
that they voted for something or they didn't vote for something.
if I'm not trying to pass the buck, but just know I've heard from a lot of communities, and rightly so, everyone's frustrated, and again, rightly so. We had over the last several years, the vast majority of people who applied got money. And in addition to that, many times those applications were flawed and they were missing certain required information, and our folks went out and held hands for, and maybe not everybody at this table, I'm just saying there are lots of communities that we held their hand to make sure they could get this funding. And this year we didn't do that. This year we said, we have so many people applying, so we started putting things in, doesn't meet requirements, and that may seem cold, but this is what we were handed. And so, again, not trying to pass the buck. All I would say is I would encourage you to speak to your lawmakers.
That's exactly my point. And that's why I'm defending it. Because your budget was cut. I mean, there's nothing you can do about it. And our state legislators, one or two of them have kind of said, NDOT. I'm like, NDOT did what you voted for them to do. And they need to,
So when you say speak to lawmakers specifically,
sorry.
I'm trying to the discussion points that are relevant.
Sure.
When we have that discussion.
Sure.
Dave and I just sat with 60 mayors, and actually I asked a question. See, and it was probably 6 different. And some of them were partially funded. And so with that said, I thought, well, where did it go? Where did the 100, you said 100 million?
Yeah, I think when you break the stats down, you might have them off the top of your head, but I thought it was like maybe 50% of counties that applied got funding, 40% of cities that applied got funding, and like 20 or 30% of towns that applied got funding, some sort of.
I didn't have that breakdown, but it was 363 applicants. 190 were awarded, 173 were denied. So we were only able to award 52%.
Where is it posted on who is it?
On the
online.
It is posted.
Yes, it is. Yeah, every year.
Posted as of last week.
Yeah, yes.
It came out yesterday. Yeah. The no letters went out before the yes list.
Yeah, so we don't have anything to complain in Marshall County. I mean, we've gotten $1 million every year since this program rolled out. So we're very grateful for the program. But I think to your question, Rod, as we're talking to legislators, we have to remind them that they set priorities. They spend money on some things and they don't spend money on others. And while this may be gas tax money and it's specifically earmarked for roads, when they make a choice, and you may not be happy to have them say this, when they make a choice to fund ready grants and then they don't fund our roads, we're choosing to do those things instead of what's our fundamental statutory responsibility. And so we're gonna be pushing them to say, I don't want your ready money, I want road money. Because that's what the taxpayers expect of us. And that's what Marshall County's about.
And it, we have to find a football. We have to find the balance.
Yeah.
It can't be a zero-sum game relative to ready versus roads. We have to figure out, a way in which we balance them both, because ready is very effective in relationship to building that way out of certain situations that actually speak to the reason why we need to fund those.
And I would say when you look at the shift that happened, the shift that happened here was road funding from community crossings to other road funding things.
Right.
Probably the most egregious, at least for folks around this table, I would think, is the $50 million set aside for the city of Indianapolis.
Yeah.
Specifically, yes, it is still for their roads, but I think that's where when everyone here, majority here, were denied community crossing funds and city of Indianapolis gets an auto $50 million, I think that becomes a tough bill as well. No, it's a separate $50 million. Yeah.
But all in the same.
Yeah. Some of it went to
And that
local
bill,
tracks.
It outlines all of it pretty well. the money cost of it.
Local tracks,
And I think
20 million.
his
Local
intention
tracks.
was valid. I mean, he wanted to shift some things, make it easier, less applications, less time spent on something, less, enough staff paying attention to, who has exactly what to report appropriately, but, the pain point in between was not conceived well, especially as things pointed out in Indianapolis, East.
And they do want us to raise taxes.
Yeah, I think that's really what the priority of the legislation kind of put the focus on municipal and county-based wheel taxes and other kind of options. I'm not attributing a value statement to that. I think that's just kind of when you look at where the focus was shifted, that's really what that legislation kind of encourages.
So are you going to look in retrospect to determine what areas, what municipalities or counties did not qualify because of an error in the application?
So what I meant by that is in past years,
No, I understand. I understand completely,
So
but
are we gonna change that? If
no,
it
not
stays
if
competitive.
you're gonna change it, but if Elkhart fell into that category.
Sure,
I want to know so that I don't repeat.
sure. I don't know off the top of my head what Catherine or team are planning to do. If it remains competitive, are we gonna proactively reach out? I honestly don't know. I do know they're in a tough spot, like I said, we kind of talked about, and so I really couldn't say. I just know historically that's what happened. I can't say that happened this year for anybody specific, so.
Yeah, I would say if you're wondering why you weren't selected this time, to contact Kathleen and her team, and they should be able to give you some insight onto was there something missing in yours, or was it just because yours was also complete, but they felt there was a higher need in another location? Because we also had to look at, okay, what's the conditions of the assets that everybody's proposing to do work on? Right. After you get rid of the folks that maybe didn't have a complete application, well, now it's where's the biggest need?
In addition to those, there's the 50% of those of the funds had to go to municipalities or counties that had 50,000 or less folks of the population. So that's another thing that we had to abide by. I will say, more importantly, I would say proactively moving forward. Get applications in as early as possible, and then proactively communicate to the folks and say, are my ducks in a row? Because that's the easiest way to do it, rather than just kind of throw caution and say, hope I did it right. And look, we're not looking to try to say, let me see how I can exclude these folks. But there are mistakes that are made that we have to add some extra time to do. So I would just say, get applications in early, proactively communicate to NDOT and say, are we good? Are we good? Anything else I'm missing, and how it's going to help? Because that's what's going to help folks to get awards. I think.
And to beat this horse really bad. Once the new lane mile distribution comes into play, if you're at $1 million on the lane distribution, you're not eligible for community crossings. That's correct. So just keep that in everybody's radar.
If you're at $1 million?
If you're getting
$1 million or more from the lane mile distribution, you would not then be able to get competitive.
So you reached your goal.
Yeah. We've reached it.
because again, the intention was to eliminate the application.
And I think the other thing we're gonna be faced with as well, I know I had a meeting with the NDOT commissioner last 2 weeks ago, and on these large projects that we're wanting to see happen in our community, I mean, this saying that Braun has of you have to have skin in the game is real. And I know I'm looking at some things on US 30, and you know, if there's some of those things that are gonna happen, somehow local community and or businesses are gonna have to step up to the plate if you're wanting to see those projects move forward in any sort of a timely manner, which is a little frustrating from a perspective that local and or businesses are having to pay for the federal highway system. But, you know, it's real. I mean, they're trying to leverage, I mean, they're NDOT has minimum funds and they're trying to make as much of a bang as they can. So they're going to try to pull in as many other dollars as they can. So I know some of the stuff that we were looking at in Warsaw, I mean, somehow there's got to be some local businesses step up to the plate if we're going to see some improvements on US 30. So
it's worth mentioning too, that's always been the case to a certain extent. I mean, there have been plenty of times where communities come to us and say, we want this big thing. And we go, that's kind of overkill. We're not going to be able to fund all that. And we can achieve the same result with this. And they go, well, we really want this. And we go, okay, well, skin in the game is going to help us get there. And that actually really does grease the wheel. So I hear your point. I don't want to discredit it. You know, you shouldn't just be receiving exactly what you guys need. Well, by the same token, we have this happen a lot where it's like, we have limited funds too. We really do significantly. So just like all of you do. And if we can have the same result for a significantly less cost, that's going to be something of our desire sometimes too. So that skin in the game is not asking folks to pay for their own stuff as much as it's like, we got to find the most efficient way to put in safety features that we can.
So I realize you have a limited budget, but it's just a little frustrating from a local perspective of what it's going to take to try to make some of these changes happen on US 30 that need to happen. So
I understand.
Well, we wanted to be able to touch on this because I know it was a
Isn't this a pleasant discussion?
Yeah. And so we wanted to make sure that we didn't just not talk about it today.
So on the agenda, we just have a few other quick updates. One of those is related to our travel demand model. So over this past year, we've been working on a new travel demand model with Cambridge Systematics, and it's coming along quite nicely, but we're into the phase where we're really seeking input from your community and staff related to population employment forecasts. This is really kind of the meat that helps us forecast, you know, how much travel we're expecting on our roadways. And so Raj is going to come up and talk a little bit about the tools that he's developed over this next month. We're scheduling meetings with community staff related to this and really wanting strong feedback from you all related to kind of these initial forecasts and where we might want to adjust those forecasts on population and employment.
So we are currently in the last phase of developing travel demand model with Cambridge Systematics, and the most important phase of the travel demand model is like predicting the accurate population and employment for the forecast years, which helps to predict accurate ADP on the roads. So this tool, Cambridge Systematics has provided us the population and employment, forecasted population and employment till 2055. So this tool includes forecast years of 2030, 35, 45, and 55. This will help the members to identify the different demographics, selecting population, employment, households, even dive deep into the basic agriculture, industrial, where they can also select the base year, whichever they want, like if they want to see 23 to 2055, 2035 to 2055, how the changes have been made in the community. And there's also functionality of forecast values, absolute change or percentage change, and some other features like to labels and show the labels and reset the map views. The most important thing is like they will be able to add the comment on the TSD network and share that comment with us, so we know like if there has to be any changes needs to be made. Yeah, the other things like we have some bar charts and line charts which helps overall the county wise, like what does the percentage change look like for the forecast years. And this tool is live on the website, so you guys can also go and check it out and let us know if there is any changes that needs to be made.
So we've already sent this to your technical staffs, or we'll be sending it to them. We want them to interact with this because the travel demand model, when you have a project and you are trying to do design, you're trying to figure out design for 25 years. And so the travel demand model gives forecasts of what traffic might look like in 25 years. A lot of that is based off of where and when we think development may occur. It's our best planning knowledge at the time. So if you have areas that are developing more rapidly or have the potential to develop, we want to be able to capture that in this so that we have accurate potential reflections of where and when and how much we think actual change may occur in certain areas. So it just helps us if you already know that you have 275 units of an apartment complex or single family homes going in these areas, that we've captured that kind of stuff, because that'll change how the model predicts origin, destination, and overall forecast. So please encourage them to be involved in that and make sure that they have provided comments so that we have the best planning knowledge at the time in this tool.
Should be large employers as well, if they have a
Large employers coming in, those kind of things. So capturing slave, those kind of things. Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks, Raj.
All right. All right. So our quarterly tracking and review meeting will be held virtually on Thursday, January 15th, 2026 to discuss local projects. The quarterly tracking forms are due by December 30th, and we will send out the schedule beforehand for that. Next up, we will be returning to Tire Rack to host another electric vehicle test drive event exclusively for local governments. It will be taking place on January 21st, 2026, with a backup snow date of January 28th. We anticipate having a lot of the same vehicles as last year, so things like the Chevy Blazer Police version, Chevy Silverado, Ford F-150, and more. Unlike last year, this event isn't tailored specifically for law enforcement, but rather an event just to keep up to date with current EV technology, learn from experts and peers. So all departments are welcome to attend. I'd ask to please promote the event to any department that may be interested. And to register, you can either scan this QR code or send me after the event, and we will be sending out an email shortly about that as well. So hope to see you there.
Great, thank you. Privilege of the floor. Here, any comments on the privilege of the floor? Hearing none, we'll move on to public comment.
Nothing online.
There's no comments online. Any here in the gallery? Motion adjourned. We have a motion to adjourn and a second. All in favor?
You all have
Thank
a
you.
wonderful holidays. Merry Christmas. We will see you in January.
How many lane miles? How many lane miles?